Hello, everyone, and welcome to Accountancy Age's LinkedIn Live broadcast. I'm Rachel Kennedy, Managing Editor of Accountancy Age, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. The discussion is going to explore the intersection of AI and accounting and how it's transforming the client relationship experience. So to guide us through this discussion, we have Tim Baker, CEO of Kloo, and Sean Smith, Accountant Evangelist at Sage. Both of these experts bring a wealth of knowledge and a unique perspective on the role of AI in accounting. It is a live interactive session, so we encourage you to participate. Feel free to ask questions and share your thoughts in the chat throughout the session. And so without further ado, Tim, I'll pass over to you.
Great, thank you, Rachel. And yeah, really good to be in this session and speaking with Sean and Sage generally. Yeah, before we start, maybe we'll sort of introduce our two companies and perhaps talk a little bit at a high level on how we think about the use of AI in slightly different contexts. I mean, for Kloo, we're a point solution really focused on accounts payable and accounts payable automation and the ways in which we can enhance that with the use of AI. We consider ourselves as a layer on top of an accounting software or an ERP that's really streamlining and sort of partnering and adding functionality in the context of procurement to payment. So processes such as requisitions, approvals, invoice management, and payments, and AEP or accounts payable is an area where I think there is quite a lot of manual process. So there's a lot of opportunity to both increase efficiency, but also increase decision making by automating a lot of the manual tasks that exist. So sort of really tangibly, that means sort of coding of invoices, ways in which you can interact with your data and your processes via natural language, and then also ways in which you can sort of augment normal processes to improve decision making. But so that at a high level, we think about AI and automation quite a few ways in our focus area of accounts payable. But Sean, I guess it's quite a lot broader with the sort of, well, the breadth of the Sage product and obviously Copilot. So yeah, great to hear how you think about AI more broadly.
Yeah, great to be here as well. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It's a lot broader for us as at Sage, just because we have such a sort of depth of suite of products. I guess like Sage, hopefully most people kind of know what Sage kind of does. Our bread and butter has been, bookkeeping and compliance since I think it's about 40 years now, since 1980s. Yeah, and we've got a whole suite of products in that area, from cloud compliance, desktop compliance, accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, HR, intact, like you name it, we've kind of got it. Yeah, and the way we kind of look at AI, obviously it's very centered around Sage Copilot, which is our AI assistant that hopefully you've all heard of as well. And our thoughts, we've got like machine learning, anomaly detection, all these kind of things have been built in for a good few years now, but it's the generative AI piece, I suppose, that's really kind of boosted this AI kind of trend in the industry, certainly. Yeah, and so the way we think about Copilot is this kind of assistant, almost like a new staff member, right? So it's this AI assistant that follows you around from tool to tool, from client to client, giving you insights, helping you automate tasks. It can be reactive or proactive. It's really there as a kind of trusted assistant to just support anything and everything that you're doing in your day job, really.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I'll pick up on a couple of points there. So, firstly, I think generative AI in so far as it can really complement other technologies is a really sort of important way we think about it. So, and often it can be quite general, but to get to really kind of specific use cases, our biggest one is probably invoice coding. So much time is spent, I think, especially in sort of the larger a business gets, in actually coding invoices, both extracting data from a document and then actually supplementing it with other sort of accounting dimensions and tracking categories and the like that you need to complete the sort of accounting process with a supplier cost. And I guess traditionally sort of AI, the use of OCR technology is the most common one, extracting that data from from an invoice, but it's relatively incomplete in that well, there's sort of a range of quality of it, but also it can really only pick what's on a document and put it in the right field. What we've found is being able to combine that technology with machine learning, but actually with generative AI really completes the picture. So for example, generative AI in that context, we will summarize the contents of a document like an invoice, and we'll be able to really understand a lot more about it and therefore fill in a lot of the gaps that a very sort of simple technology that's just looking at what's there and putting it in the right box couldn't necessarily do. So I think that's probably our most fundamental one. And interested if you got any sort of use cases.
Well, I was just going to say there is that very much sort of like reading the document, almost like taking or coming up with the context of the document rather than just like the date, amount, that kind of just the raw data that's there. Are you talking about it almost gleaning some kind of context out of that invoice as well?
Yeah, I think I guess when you think of flaws with things like OCR, so the types of fields that are quite sort of information that's quite difficult to extract might be description, for example, which could be very long, many lines. It could be very short. But actually, if you can you can take the description, but you can also extract everything on that invoice and provide a really concise summary that's sort of consistently formatted and let someone really know what is on that invoice and populates that sort of information consistently. And then there's other things, even sort of things related to tax amounts and other areas of the invoice. Actually, if we supplement sort of just reading the invoice with actually understanding the broader context of what's there, we can basically provide much more sort of accurate, but also much more consistency in terms of being able to get to full automation.
Yeah, absolutely. Just thinking of use cases there of like different line items within an invoice, right, may have different tax behaviors, right? So you might have like the labor and the materials separated out. Of course, there's different taxes on both of those, right? So if AI can decipher that and almost start to split that out for you, that's a huge task as well, right?
Yeah, it's really big. I guess I'm very able to take us down a specific accounts payable rabbit hole. So what are some of the other use cases, sort of areas of the customer proposition that have really been impacted, do you think, with Copilot or with the use of AI for Sage?
Yeah. So AI for Sage, like the areas we kind of see it really coming into like its strengths is that kind of like anomaly detection, reducing sort of like incidents of like fraud or mistakes. Just because typically any sort of like risk management like that before is done by human intervention or manually, and it's inconceivable to kind of say that you would look through 10,000 lines of data. So the way we approach it is we break it down, right? So we spot check certain transactions and look at whether they've been treated correctly or not, and that's how we kind of test it, like stress test that risk management. Of course, the power of AI and these machine learning tools is that they can read data all day and they can do it in seconds, right? So it kind of removes the risk of just spot checking something to actually being able to look through an entire data sort of spread and test it all for anomalies or any kind of like risk or fraud or mistakes. So that's where we see it massively helping in terms of like use cases with our customer base, is removing the chance of any kind of errors getting past your risk management system, and therefore building like trust in the information you have, which I think is really important. That kind of leads on to the later conversations of you're taking that data, you're reporting on it, and you're delivering insights, right, and making decisions. Of course, if you've got a lot of trust and you know that data is true and up to date and there's no errors, then you can be a lot more confident in the decisions that you're making at the other end of the process.
Yeah, I think the idea of going on to sort of insights and reporting and visibility into your numbers, I think a really interesting area is, again, a generative AI use case, the ability to interact with your kind of company's data and your sort of broader data in a different way. And I think this is something we're doing, and I really think it's part of the co-pilot concept as well, around being able to ask natural language conversations of a much broader set. So, and actually outside of finance, this whole concept of being able to interact with software or data via sort of natural language. So in the past, you might have asked someone a specific, finance director maybe asked a specific question about, why is this number changing or this trend changing? But actually, if you can just ask the tool that holds your data that holds that data, then it can become really kind of a really different way to interact and, replace the spreadsheets, sort of sifting through spreadsheets and writing different formulas and things. Is that an area that you've seen some interesting use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the ability to almost like democratize those kind of questions, right? You're saying previously it was financial directors, right? That's very high-end individuals. They're time poor. They're very expensive charge out rates, for example. Being able to democratize that information internally or externally to get insights at scale is super useful. Yeah. Yeah, so we certainly see it working in that space. I can't remember the second part of your question now.
Yeah, well, no, I think that was it really. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's the ability to sort of interact with your data in a different way.
Yeah.
And then sort of quite a similar theme related to the same point around sort of natural language interaction.
Natural language.
Yeah, we think of it also around talking to your data, asking questions of your data, getting out. You might say, who's blocking this approval happening or whatever, and you can get that sort of information out. But then the other one is also triggering processes via that as well. So in our case, with the procurement payment sort of life cycle, we might say you might be able to sort of email, you can sort of email or Slack into the system, I want to spend money with this supplier. How do I start that process? And it can sort of trigger the requisitions process without removing any of the controls. And I think that's really interesting, the idea that you don't necessarily have to have logging into systems. You can start to really interact with it via the tools that you're already using and keep it really within the flow of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've seen that as well. So we're looking at when we're implementing Copilot, you can set kind of like frameworks or parameters. Usually the easiest way to think about it is it's kind of fixed around like user access. So if a particular user asks a question or asks to do something, a particular task, they'd only be able to action that through Copilot if it was within their access rights already, kind of idea. So to your point of like keeping that control, you can have master admins and things like that, setting user levels and thresholds and controls, which then allows the sort of doers, if we want to call them that, who are actioning these kind of payments through that natural language, to be able to just, put in what they want, have it pre-approved and go if it's within the thresholds, or then, get a response back saying, this is over the threshold. It would then maybe alert a senior to review and approve, kind of idea.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're having some comments come through. So I just see there's one about the sort of idea of intelligence analytics from accounts payable point of view. So the idea that you can say, are my subscription costs going up? Do my competitors pay less for the same platform? That sort of interacting with publicly available data, your own proprietary data, and maybe a kind of combination of that in terms of sort of aggregated, anonymized data that might be interesting. I mean, one area that leads me on to, I think, is really around decision making. So it's so easy. Part of the topic of this discussion is really automation, and so you immediately go into efficiency. But that is an area obviously that a lot of sort of finance functions can look for opportunities to improve. But I think the biggest win has got to be actually making better decisions, and then having, I guess, context to be able to do those. So we think a lot about how we can use AI, and again generative AI, to deliver like relevant, concise information in the flow of sort of decision making. So if you're approving a purchase order, for example, what that supplier does, who the competitors are, maybe even the benchmark cost, are you paying more or less than someone like you? And that is the real power, I think, which all of this information you might be able to access, but you'd have to go off a platform, take a lot of time out of your day to figure it out. But being able to deliver that at the point of consideration, decision making is I think the even bigger win than just becoming more efficient in processes. I don't know if that's I
don't really have a huge amount to add to that, other than I completely agree. Like that's what we think about that as well, in terms of just surfacing insights that are relevant contextually to where someone is in the platform is super valuable. And one of the powers that AI kind of gives us the ability to do. So whether it's within, the proprietary data, like you say, of sort of saying, typically this expense is X with this supplier. This transaction is considerably larger. Are you sure? Or, something like that from a risk point of view, or even, as you say, they are maybe going further afield, so outside of maybe the ring-fenced data that Copilot typically uses for giving insights, to sort of look at that publicly available data, almost like a compare the meerkat, I guess, kind of idea, like you're saying, like what's the benchmark cost for these kind of utilities or whatever it is. So just kind of mirroring what you were saying there, but I agree.
Yeah, it's great. And then so you've been at Accountancy, right, in the last few days, and I guess Sage is, obviously the Copilot is very high profile and exciting. What are when you do the demos and things, what's like the number one thing people sort of really hold on to, the biggest, it's something that's the most new or the most surprising to people?
I don't know. I guess it's the generative bit that's kind of new and exciting to them. So it's the proactiveness. So it's surfacing like information from their client base, for example. I think the thing that we're getting feedback most on is kind of like the trust and the ethics of it all. So, where's my data going? Where's that information coming from? Seems to be the biggest thing that people are interested in knowing. I think that's just a peace of mind thing that which kind of makes sense, right? So it's financial data is sensitive. It's really important to all of us, and it's just kind of understanding where the insights are coming from and how like publicly available they are. Is probably the biggest thing that people spot or ask us about. In terms of like what they think is like the wow factor kind of thing, I think it's the generative piece. So it's taking like pieces of data and then coming back with a sort of a humanized kind of paragraph explaining what a number means, for example, or suggesting a next action kind of piece. It's that getting a human interaction back from a machine that's quite impressive, I think, to all of us as humans.
Yeah. And I guess the point you make about the sort of adoption challenges, I suppose it's really that trust that your data is not going into training, some particular model or leaving the country or something like this. I mean, I think that maybe is a sort of time and number of companies doing these things and the kind of use cases as it starts to evolve. Are there any other, I suppose, adoption challenges that you think, or maybe even parts of finance functions or types of companies that you think are going to be slower or need, certain different types of convincing to get on board?
I think in terms of like barriers to adoption, I think that the biggest one has to be that trust piece, like trusting the information you're getting and where it's going and that kind of thing is really important. I think you're right, as time goes on and people learn how to use these models and the models give them back reliable information consistently, they'll start to trust them. I think another sort of risk or worry or kind of barrier to adoption is that AI and these kind of features are going to replace jobs or replace, people and what they do. But, we found, we did a study just recently of way over like 2,000 firms across the globe, because we're like multinational, we're in lots of different regions. And 67% were saying that actually, since adopting AI, they've had to hire more. So it's almost like completely the opposite to that fear. So I think as people kind of see that and realize the opportunities that it gives, that barrier will be removed as well in terms of it replacing jobs. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, and you asked what other industries might be kind of slow to. I guess it would be service-based industries. I suppose that would be the last ones to really kind of delve into the AI kind of piece. So if we take the accounting firm as an example, it makes sense for bank reconciliation, payments, payroll, things like that to be automated and AI to kind of take up those kind of roles. But I feel like the last thing to be affected by AI would probably be, that human relationship between the accountant and their client, or the business owner, the FD and their accountant, and that advice and understanding the numbers and talking to what those numbers mean and making the decisions. I think that'll probably be the last bit that's affected by AI.
Yeah, it's that sort of augmentation versus replacement sort of discussion, isn't it? I think, well, I mean, you've sort of, just the phrase co-pilot in itself, I think, puts forward the
exactly
that,
a well-chosen name
for that. I think, I mean, yeah, I mean, we really think about it as Kloo around providing the right sort of context at the right time, like within the flow of work, and that's really the same point around co-piloting. It's the sort of augmentation and improvement of efficiency and also decision making all in one. We've sort of played with the idea of, I guess, if you take it to its like natural conclusion, you might go more extreme in the context of supplier costs, where maybe you have a budget, you have a sort of decision-making framework, and actually decisions are made automatically within that context. And I just don't think, I think that's a bit extreme, and it's actually, there's far too much nuance and like need for judgment, that really what we can achieve is the taking away of sort of the more manual, mundane tasks, so that the same people can be focusing on more strategic, difficult decision making and processes. So like you say, I mean, I'm interested in your point around actually potentially increasing the cost base of companies. Maybe it's because they were doing particularly well because they were using the AI, so they needed to hire more people, hopefully. But
exactly,
but yeah, I think the key is it's not it is certainly at the moment around improving decision making, like augmenting people that are already doing things and removing some of the more manual tasks that don't necessarily need a human judgment, rather than going any further than that.
Yeah, to that point about sort of the extreme that you're talking about there of setting a framework and then decision making is automated. I think that is quite extreme, but there is probably some substance to that, in the sense that I feel like as a finance industry, the onus will come back to us to sort of review and kind of ethically control AI. So it will do more and more of those tasks and more automation and decision making, or helping with decision making. And therefore there'll be more of an onus on us as accountants and finance professionals to control AI and decide, ethically what decisions it can and can't make, and that kind of idea. So I think that will create jobs as well, and certainly work in our side of things. As it does more and more for us, we'll have to make sure that we are on top of that in terms of the controls and making sure it's behaving, etc.
Yeah, no, that is a really good point. Yeah, around sort of letting it loose and being able to control it. We're sort of coming to the end. I just wanted to make sure we have a chance to answer a couple of questions. So one that's come through: what is the implementation process like? Is it as easy as the flow of work it acts in? So maybe you talked about that already a bit, Sean, around in terms of Sage, around like, can you set it up or set up your configurations via the interaction with Copilot, or is it just
what's the implementation process of Copilot like? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's what that question is hinting at.
I mean, it's super easy. I don't actually believe there really is an implementation process other than turning it on. Once it's turned on, you get insights pop up kind of wherever you are in the system. So if you're in your dashboard looking at multiple clients, you get insights popping up in the sort of middle area just above your client list. And there's also like a panel on the right hand side that you can click on that will kind of opens it up. So once that functionality is turned on, you can kind of do what you want. Obviously more and more features and capabilities will come into that. It can't do absolutely everything at this moment in time. It is growing and learning. So it'll provide insights, and you can click on that, and then, you know, if it's giving you an insight like self-assessment clients are coming up to their deadline, do you want to kind of start that process? You can say yes, or you can just ignore the prompt and just use, you know, plain language and just ask it a question and kind of see what it gives you back. So in terms of an implementation, it's just turning it on and then letting it learn and grow with you.
Yeah, and I think relatively similar answer for Kloo on that. I mean, we once we sort of work with a new customer, we really can switch it on and switch on the integrations, for example, with Sage. Intact, our main sort of partnership with Sage, very quickly in sort of process of minutes if all the permissions are set up. And then we have sort of options, I guess, the way a business starts to build up their use of Kloo. Either we'll learn from behavior, so people can just use it, and the system will start to learn and pre-code sort of approval flows based on learning from that behavior, or we can kind of set up rules and go from there, and then the system can continually learn. So yeah, I mean, I guess the question was really, is it as easy as the flow of work it acts in? And I think it's certainly very close. So yeah, it's good. That's a good question. Yeah, okay, so I guess we're really close to the end. I mean, I would just say as sort of closing remarks from me in terms of Kloo, that yeah, if anyone's sort of interested in really understanding more about how we work on the you sort of really driving automation and using AI to do that in the really right from procurement to payment process, then I encourage you to go to our website, getkloo.com, and there's loads of interactive demos on there. And then obviously you can book a demo as well. And then also really feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn, and really happy to kind of arrange a discussion and follow up from there. Sean, I don't know, any sort of closing remarks on related to working with Sage or AI more broadly?
Yeah, so Sage and AI broadly, I would say don't be too fearful of it. You know, try it, test it. I think the best thing to do is to, you know, trial these things, right? So you can do that with Copilot now. We have a waiting list to you know, get access to Copilot, and we'll sort of, as we release it through our architecture, it'll go through that waiting list. So the sooner you're on it, the sooner you'll get access. And then yeah, just test it, play with it, see what it can do for you. I think that's probably the best way to remove any kind of fears and start to build that trust from your side. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sean.
No worries at all. Yeah, it was really good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you both so much for the discussion and for sharing your insights. A big thank you to everyone who joined us and participated in the discussion. We hope you found it interesting. And as both Tim and Sean have said, please do reach out to them if you have any further questions, and they'll be more than happy to answer anything that you come up with. If you have enjoyed today's live broadcast, make sure that you sign up to Accountancy Age's newsletter. We'll be following up with all the kind of takeaways, key points from the discussion, and also linking you with Tim and Sean.